I came to university with a very clear vision of what it was going to be like. It was going to be a place with wide open spaces where conversation would flow freely. It was going to be a place where communities of people got together to answer life's big questions. It was going to be a place where all of life problems was going to be solved. Needless to say, that's not what I found when I got to uni. I encountered something very different. Disconnection. Hi, my name is Miranda. I'm a second-year sociology student from Peru. And let's just say that my experience with higher education has been extremely different from what I thought it was going to be like. As we know, higher education is facing a polycrisis. It's not a singular issue, but overlapping pressures that are shaping every aspect of campus life. Industrial action, questionable administrative choices, and a consumer-driven model have shifted our focus from learning to just a plain transaction of money for degrees. The result is a system that is actively harming staff and students by eroding trust, well-being, and belonging. At the heart of every university are its students. And if we want to go back to a place of stability and successful learning, we must place students back at the center of it. This is achieved by rebuilding the connections that have been eroded by digital learning and institutional tensions. But how do we achieve this? How do we rebuild connection? This is where co-creation comes in. Co-creation is a collaborative process between staff and students where they work together as partners to develop and implement learning experiences. Co-creation improves trust, well-being, and belonging. And in times of tension, such as the ones we're living through right now in higher education, it offers a practical way to rebuild connection. So, this all sounds great, but how do we actually co-create? Hopefully, with this presentation, you guys are going to be able to co-create in your academic lives. So first of all, we need to ask, where can we co-create? There are 3 pillars in higher education where co-creation can easily be embedded. The first is co-creation of programs. So this means having staff and students working together in creating and shaping core aspects of a program, such as curriculum design. This would lead to more transparent and inclusive courses. The next is co-creation within programs. So there's no need to start from scratch. That may be a lot. But you can just choose a certain part that you want to change or improve, such as, for example, assessment criteria. Co-creation of assessment criteria leads to more transparent assessment, and it fosters an environment of mutual understanding as students and staff know why the assessment criteria is what it is. So it helps to reduce tensions in an area that is often a source of friction. And finally, we can co-create in decision-making processes. As we know, higher education is marked with this hierarchical power structure that often suppresses student voice and autonomy. By including students in decision-making processes, we're emancipating their knowledge and actually valuing what they're doing. So now that we know where we can co-create, the next question is, how does co-creation actually look like in practice? So co-creation doesn't really have one fixed shape, and that's the whole point of it, as it's made to challenge this top-down way things are normally done in higher education. It's a very creative process. So it's gonna look very different in every classroom, every faculty, every university. But this doesn't mean that it's messy or directionless, not at all. Co-creation is more like structured creativity. Whatever form it takes, as long as it's purposeful, transparent, and meaningful, co-creation will be successful. So let's actually look at how co-creation shows up in real educational spaces. First, we have student representation for co-creation. This means things like student representatives or student staff committees. This is the first great step towards a partnership. But for co-creation to actually work, students cannot have just symbolic roles, they actually have to influence. This means that students aren't just listening to updates, they're actually sitting in faculty meetings where decisions about teaching and assessment and curricular are being shaped. Their voice and their opinion is not just noted and then quietly forgotten. It actually informs decision making. And for students to be able to do this, they must be trained, briefed, and supported so they can talk about all the community of voices, not just their own opinions. Next, we have co-designing of academic tools. This means staff and students working together to design the academic tools that are going to be used in our everyday university life. This can be things like feedback loops or questions for assessment and things like that. By making students be part of this process, students aren't just having education being done to them, but their education is something that it's built with them. And that shift creates a whole difference in how they engage. Next, we have co-creation of educational research. In higher education, there's a lot of educational research being done, but student participation is normally just limited to answering the survey or going in for an interview. With co-creation in educational research, students leave that title of a participant and become actual partners in knowledge creation. So this would mean helping them co-create the research question or help co-collect the data and even share the information and the findings together. And finally, and this presentation is based on a co-creation research that I personally did. So I have an amazing experience having done co-creation. It truly was an amazing experience where myself, another student, and a professor co-created in a research about how co-creation, I said co-creation so many times right now, I hope you're following me. Co-creation shows up in real educational spaces in Russell Group universities and how we can simplify this concept so it can be applied in every university. This research, I was a partner. I was not being investigated. I helped create the knowledge, and my knowledge was emancipated, and it truly felt like I belonged in the place I was in. So it was amazing. So yeah. And finally, we have co-creation in classrooms. So there's absolutely no need for fancy committees or insanely big research projects. Co-creation can be done in the classroom in very small but meaningful ways. This can look like setting seminar norms together or choosing the next reading together. This small but effective ways of co-creating help students feel like their classes belong to them too, so it helps them engage more deeply. So, all of this sounds great, but there's a few ethical considerations that must be considered in order for co-creation to succeed. First of all, we have communication. So, as co-creation brings staff and students into close collaboration, we need to keep safeguarding. This means that everything they have talked about and how they communicate must be through professional channels, such as Microsoft Teams, university email, or even on-campus spaces. This would mean that the collaboration will be grounded in healthy boundaries. Next, we have power dynamics. So, as we have mentioned, power dynamics really shape how higher education works. And we must acknowledge power dynamics to see if these are undermining the emancipation of knowledge of some students because they maybe don't feel comfortable to talk. If we don't acknowledge power dynamics in co-creation, we risk co-creation becoming tokenistic and not truly meaningful. And finally, diversity and inclusivity. Co-creation projects must be diverse from the start because they must represent the cohort of students that the project is working for. So this means we need students from different ethnicities, ages, religions, genders, and just different backgrounds. If our participation is only narrow, it will only create narrow results. And there's one more thing I want to talk about co-creation. It's a key takeaway, a secret ingredient, meaningful involvement. Staff and students must have a shared purpose that they want to work together towards. If they have that shared purpose, co-creation is going to succeed. So, as we come to an end, this is what I hope stays with you. Higher education is facing a crisis of connection, not because nobody wants to connect, but because the structures of higher education have pushed learning into a transactional space. We need to rebuild connection, and co-creation shows us a way forward with that. Co-creation is a collaborative process between staff and students working together to create, develop, and implement learning experiences. It can be easily embedded in the creation of programs, within programs themselves, and in decision-making processes. Co-creation looks very different as it's a creative process, but as long as it's purposeful, transparent, and meaningful to everyone involved, that's good co-creation. So some examples of this would be student representatives, student staff committees, co-creation of academic tools, co-creation for educational research, and co-creation in classrooms in your everyday life. For co-creation to be successful, you must keep in mind all the ethical considerations. So co-creation must stay grounded in healthy boundaries of communication, power dynamics must be acknowledged, and it must be inclusive from the start. And just a key takeaway, something for you to remember every time you try to co-create, remember that you have to be meaningfully involved in it. So, co-creation is about a partnership. Co-creation hopes to rebuild connection for education and higher and universities to become once again places of curiosity and successful learning. So, let's stop waiting for connection to happen. Let's co-create it. Thank you very much.